I really would like to thank you all for taking your Friday to join a collective conversation about student achievement. My name is Chad Fry. I'm the director of the Agape Center for Curricular Service Learning at Messiah College, and it is my sincere pleasure and honor to have all of you here. This convening in many ways illustrates the kinds of partnerships, collaborations that are needed to help students achieve across the state for the 21st century. And so we have a number of very esteemed guests. These are leaders, thought leaders, expert practitioners from across the state, and actually at the local and federal level that you'll hear from today in a number of different ways. I'm going to introduce to you Pennsylvania Secretary of Education Pedro Rivera, followed by Mayor Eric Papenfuss. And they are going to both talk kind of at the state and at the local level, and then you'll have a chance to hear from Ken Bedell, who's the Senior Advisor to the White House Office of Faith-Based Initiatives and Neighborhood Partnerships at the U.S. Department of Education. And then Max Finberg, who is the Director of AmeriCorps Vista at the Corporation for National Community Service, will also talk to us as well. So that'll start us off. Big task, okay? Again, thank you all for coming. Would you just welcome our guests publicly? We'll break the ice and we'll just thank them for coming. Just want to share a few things about Secretary Rivera. First thing I'd like to share is that he's not Secretary Cortez. It is very easy with two folks in very important positions to miscommunicate, and he is here through the giftedness of his staff to sort through that this was an invitation to him, and we wanted him and not somebody else. So thank you, Secretary, for coming. Secretary Rivera was nominated by Governor Wolf to serve in his role on January 20th, 2015. He's most recently served as superintendent of the School District of Lancaster, a position he held from 2008 to 2015. Under the Secretary's leadership, the School District of Lancaster developed and implemented a new curriculum, an aggressive professional development plan, and an innovative teacher observation tool. These initiatives resulted in increased graduation rates, notable improvements in math, science, and writing proficiency scores, and enhanced the level of participation from high-performing students in programs that will help them prepare for college and post-grad opportunities in the 21st century. In September 2014, Secretary Rivera was honored by the White House as a champion of change for his efforts to transform urban education. He's one of 10 recipients nationwide to receive this prestigious honor. He brings extensive experience in public education to his role as the member of Governor Wolf's cabinet, and he spent his entire career helping students. He has a very, very long list of achievements and accomplishments, but I think it's very safe to say that Secretary Rivera is in his role because he loves parents, he loves students, and cares very, very much about the kind of partnerships that will help them succeed. So please welcome Secretary Pedro Rivera.
I always like to start off with a good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Great energy in the room. So first, it's an absolute privilege to be here and just coming into the building and feeding off of the energy as we've come. As I walk closer and closer to the room, I know this is going to be an amazing morning. You guys are going to do some amazing things and really engage in some great dialogue. So it's very interesting when you're standing up here and representing the state, especially during these interesting times in the Commonwealth. And there's always a one big item that everyone wants to hear about and talk about and really share an opinion about. And of course, that's the state budget, which I know everyone's interested and really wants to know. But I'm not going to start with that. I'm not going to share that. I'm going to keep you on the edge of your seats for a few minutes here. I do want to take a moment, especially with the stakeholder group we have today, to talk about conditions, conditions of teaching and learning, and why, whereas we can discuss, resources which are needed, and we can discuss, monetary needs, which are extremely important, but quite often we get lost in that conversation, in the weeds of that conversation, and we tend to forget that probably the biggest, most important factor for educating today's children, for serving today's communities, are conditions, and the conditions in which we serve, the conditions in which we teach, and the conditions that we expect others to achieve. And it's interesting because having been an educator for all of my career, having grown up in North Philadelphia, having been raised by a mother that was a very strong mother that really focused on education, although she may not have necessarily always known what it is that I was doing in terms of educationally, but she always made sure I was doing something. And she'd look over my shoulder to check my homework, and although she may not have always known what was being written on that piece of paper, or the algorithm, or equation being used, or how to compute the math standards or the chemistry equations I was using, but she made sure that I was doing something. So I wanted to take the time, especially with this audience, to just start to discuss the opportunities we have to change the face and the conditions of education. And not only as a teacher, as an educator, it's something I really learned as a parent as well. So not only do I get to represent education at the state level in 500 school districts, 1.74 million students, libraries, higher ed, early childhood, but at home, I'm the father of a 12-year-old who just now midway, third report period into sixth grade, in an urban middle school. And I have a little girl who just turned 5 who's going to be starting kindergarten next year and is an early childhood program. So yes, my wife is a saint. She's amazing. She's amazing. But I learned an interesting lesson from my son early on. So in the spirit of spring, I remember at about 5 years old, I like all dads, I tried to live vicariously through him and signed them up for baseball. At about 5, they start to move away from T-ball to coach pitch, which is brutal. Especially as a father, because you're wondering why he's just standing there and the ball's just going by him. And you wonder why he's more interested in playing with grass in the outfield or in the, than actually trying to catch a ball. And my son had an opportunity in, coach pitch to play catcher. And, because he's built like me, so they figured we better stick this guy back in the, in the catcher's mound. And so the coach would hit him, in the cage and on the chest plate more than, anything, than he actually caught the ball. So I came up with this really great idea. I pulled him aside and I said, Lucas, look at me. Every ball you hit, I will give you $1. And he perked up. So Dad, you're saying every ball I hit, you will give me $1. What if I hit 100 balls? I said, I'll give you $100. Knowing mathematically, it just wasn't going to happen. I said, I will give you $100. And he was happy. He was pretty perked up. So he goes up and he gets up on the mound, and the first ball just strike. He doesn't even swing. And I was like, this dollar issue is not going to work. What's going on? I said, don't forget, buddy, $1. I'll give you $1. Trying not to be that guy, but just containing myself. So the second or third pitch comes in, and he hits the ball, and he's running the first base, and he is tug out. He doesn't make it. But comes over, he goes, hey, I hit the ball, I'm getting $1, right? I said, absolutely. I said, I'll tell you what, if you hit the ball, I'll give you $1. If you make it to base, because he kind of walked to first base in my defense, if you get to base, I'll give you $1. Every base you're on, right? So an inning passed by, he didn't do anything, and then finally, it was the end of the game. So it was like, probably by that age, it felt like it was like 20th inning, but it was probably 7th inning. So he hits the ball. And so, he gets $1. He makes it to first base. And so he looks over at me. I said, yeah, bud, you made it to base, you get $2. And so the next batter up hits it. He runs to second base, and he looks over at me. I said, yeah, you are up to $3. you're doing great. And then he runs and he makes it, over. Actually, this time it was $4. So he makes it over and he makes it to third base and he looks at me and I'm like really proud. I figured this whole incentive thing out, all these years in education, and I threw everything I learned out the window for my son. So he's at third base and so he's running home and he's looking at me and he's running home. And if you've ever seen a 5-year-old baseball, it's interesting because they don't throw the ball at each other. It's just everybody runs after the one ball. And then so the kid has a ball in his hand and he's chasing my son. And my son's running home and the kid's chasing my son. And my son's running home and, I'm the proud dad here. My son's about to score a point, for his team. And the kid's chasing and my son's running. And he stops about 5 feet from home plate. He says, "Hey, Dad, you owe me $5. And he's tugging, he's out. So it's the interesting lesson that we learn. And, it's funny, you'll hear my wife tells the story a little differently, but it is all the whole $5, everything kind there. She thinks I'm a little psycho at this point, but that's another story for another day. But that is exactly when we think about the conditions of learning, the conditions that we set for our kids, for our school districts, for my son. So I learned an interesting lesson that day. I was focused on him trying his hardest to play baseball. I would love for him to have learned early on how good it feels to score a run. And the incentive that I used was not aligned to that end, right? Because in his mind, he knew every hit he made, every base he touched, every time he made it safe, he was going to get $1. So here's the lesson that we learn in terms of education. What we've done over the course of the past few years by focusing solely on one measure of success, standardized test, is as short-sighted as paying for $1 per base. Absolutely. And what we've been working on under the direction of the governor, and the governor has been really actively engaged and involved in this, is changing how we look at schools. And knowing that students learn in multifaceted ways. There's no cookie-cutter approach to education. So what we have to do is we have to focus on educating students, assessing how we educate students holistically. And we're engaging in this work around the school performance profile to move away from the sole reliance on standardized tests, because right now it's anywhere between 60 and 90% aligned to standardized tests, to looking more holistically at students. Thousands of stakeholders come together. We had members of community groups, we had industry leaders, business leaders, educators, administrators, students, parents come together and give feedback, 27 engagement sessions to share with us what they thought was most important in assessing schools. And they shared feedback. Why not look at reading on grade level? Why not look at performing math on grade level? Why not look at coming to school, attendance? Why not look at access to high quality programs, AP, IB, dual enrollment, career and technical education programs, opportunities that will not only ensure our kids are graduating on time with the skills needed, but they're going to go beyond high school graduation and work towards an industry certificate, 2-year degree, 4-year degree. Why not look at English acquisition for English language learners? Why not look at meeting LRE goals or looking at IEP goals for our students with special needs? Hey, how about a focus on college and career awareness? So we've really started to change how we're focusing on accountability in schools, and we're going to be working with the General Assembly now, hopefully, to change this language so that when students graduate from school and we assess schools, we can say, you've met goals that ensure, or strategies that ensure students will be successful beyond high school, the K-12 system, and while investing $60 million a year in early childhood education. We know that even if we invest the 60 that we wanted last year, and I'll be really quick, and the 60 that we wanted this year, we're still only serving 39% of the eligible students in the Commonwealth. So there's need, and there's room to grow. So I didn't speak about budget, but we have to discuss the budget around an investment. You're hearing folks say cost. You have to say no. Investment. Because we're not just asking for money, we're building a system that's going to ensure the resources improve the quality of life for students. So thank you. I could have gotten more and more engaged, but I just wanted to make sure that we engaged on this beautiful Friday morning and asked that you share the narrative. It's time to invest in our children. It's time to invest in our communities. If we invest now, the leaders of tomorrow will be that much more successful. So thank you very much for your time and allowing me to share.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me say thank you to Secretary Rivera. I don't think anyone has fought harder on behalf of Harrisburg residents to bring greater funding to our schools. It's an uphill battle in this political climate, but he's out there every day advocating for the right things. He's also been a good friend to Harrisburg and has focused his attentions on improving the district here, and we thank him for that attention as well. I'm also pleased to find I'm not the only father that resorts to monetary bribery. I have 3 young children, and I'm doing that all the time. Usually it's to in an effort to get them not to do something rather than to do something, but we'll work on that. I'm also a former public school teacher. I taught in Central Dauphin for Yvonne Hollins, who's in the back. I see her there. Taught Latin. It was my first job upon moving to the region here in central Pennsylvania. Really taught me a lot. I used all that knowledge to move from that into a career as a bookseller of all things, the Midtown Scholar Bookstore up the way. And I consider my whole foray into politics as a sort of extension of that learning. My focus on education is genuine because I think education is the key to Harrisburg's revitalization and resurgence. We're going to talk about that, I think, at the upcoming panel this morning. I'm looking forward to that, but you can't talk about real economic development without a strong educational foundation. You can't talk about opportunities or public safety without focusing first on community partnerships, faith-based partnerships, making sure that all of our children have the skills that they need to be successful. So with that by way, I wanted to offer a brief introduction. I want to say good morning to everyone. And most importantly, on behalf of the people of the great city of Harrisburg, I extend to all of you a heartfelt welcome to this convening conference. Our city is delighted to host this event and to welcome Ken Bedell, Senior Advisor to the White House Faith-Based and Neighborhoods Partnership Center, and Max Finberg, Director of AmeriCorps VSTIT. Thanks to both of them for being here in Harrisburg. It is a real honor to have them here. I'm looking forward to hearing them speak. And I want to also thank the organizations that have come together to make this event a reality. The Agape Center of Messiah College and Chad Fry, who does such great work. The Harrisburg School District, the United Way of the Capital Region, and the World Affairs Council of Harrisburg, with special thanks to my communications director, Joyce Davis. Thank you to all of you for making this happen and for convening everyone right here in Harrisburg. This conference provides an opportunity to contemplate ways in which we can work together to strengthen schools in our city and in our region. I believe it's imperative that we bring everyone to the table, everyone, from business leaders to educational leaders, nonprofits, colleges, universities, to collaborate and ensure that our youth are well educated, well prepared for those challenges of a globalized and a very competitive world. We can't afford to tolerate mediocrity, or worse, failing schools, and we can't place the burden of improving our schools only on teachers and parents. We all have to have a stake in guaranteeing quality education for our children. And our very survival as a city, as a region, and as a commonwealth, and even as a nation, depends on making that collective investment. So even as I have worked these past 2.5 years as mayor to pull Harrisburg from the brink of economic disaster, I know that our city won't fully recover unless our schools can truly fulfill their mission to inspire and to nourish the genius inherent in all of our children. And our city won't fully recover unless teachers have the tools that they need to motivate and to open minds in their classrooms. And our city won't fully recover unless every student leaves Harrisburg High or SciTech or CASA ready to meet the academic challenges of our most demanding colleges and universities. So as we open this event, I would urge you all to take full advantage of this opportunity to learn from the experiences of the experts assembled who will share their knowledge over the course of these next 2 days. We must take seriously their call to forge partnerships among government, education, business, and nonprofits. And we must all be willing to give of our time, our talents, and our resources to meet the needs that are so evident and so pressing in our schools. And we must be willing to put aside any political or personal differences that would block our path to successful schools and quality education for all of our youth. So again, I thank everyone who has contributed to organizing this important event in Harrisburg today. We know you will enjoy this conference and leave invigorated for the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. It's an honor for me to participate, and I look forward to today's discussions. Thank you.
Wow. Well, my name's Ken Bedell, and I work in the Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnerships Center at the U.S. Department of Education. Max Finberg has a background in the faith-based and neighborhood partnerships work because there are 13 agencies that connect through the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnership. And Max came into the administration as the director of the Department of Agriculture's Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnership Center. That work, writ large, is to encourage community groups, faith-based and secular, to participate in the broad work that government also shares in of making America work. The schools, the work that's done at the Department of Agriculture, Department of Energy, Health and Human Services, all of that work connects together through what happens in the community, and that's the place that it really makes a difference to people's lives. So it's exciting to be here with Max and with the rest of you as we kind of consider what contribution there is to be made by the community. But I'd also like to kind of turn that around the other way. It's really, how do we make community work? What is it that makes it and so that the community is successful, and the schools play an extremely large part of that, as does higher education. On your table is a postcard, a color postcard that talks about a program that President Obama started that is called the President's Interfaith and Community Service Campus Challenge. It's directed towards higher education, and the president started it out of a belief that it would be good for all college students to be involved in community service in a way that they had an opportunity to reflect back on why they were doing it. What were their values? What was their faith-based, or what were their values that led them to that? When our office goes around the country talking to various groups, Messiah College is a college that we give as an example of where this has and continues to be taken seriously, of helping students in an interfaith environment to participate in community service and to be making the community a better place. Another program that the Faith-Based Neighborhood Partnership Office works on in the Department of Education, we call Together for Tomorrow. And there's not very many people here that I imagine I have to explain what that's all about, but I'd like to say just a couple of words about how we've envisioned that out of the Department of Education. No question, but what successful communities have successful schools, and successful schools depend on community engagement and being at the center of that. Then there's also family and community there's also family engagement and parental and other family member engagement. Sometimes those get a little bit crossed over and mixed up. The school doesn't really have a choice of who your families are. You get to take what comes. But when it comes to community involvement, it's very important that the school works with the community to make sure that it isn't just meeting needs that maybe someone likes dance and they want to do something with dance that isn't really going to be supportive of what the school needs. And so that there needs to be consideration of what it is that is really going to make a difference for the young people, for the students. And so it's different in that you don't just have to take everything that comes. There needs to be focus, and then there needs to be seeking out exactly what's needed from the community for that cooperation to work. And so one of the things that is happening here in Harrisburg, and that we also talk about when we go around the country, is that Together for Tomorrow, communities working with the schools need to have a way to say, okay, when is this working? And we suggest, and it's being used here, that look at attendance, behavior, course fulfillment or success in academic success, and college access. I remember that because it's ABCC. And that as we look at community involvement, we're looking at quality involvement. And that's what's exciting about watching what's happening here in Harrisburg, is that there's an intentionality, not just, well, we get a whole lot of people to drop by our school, but we're serious about making sure that it's making a difference and quality. My main task is not to say all that I've just said, but to introduce Max, which I want to move on to right away. You've got in your book, in your packet, a biography, and it's 2 paragraphs long, and it doesn't look like he could have possibly be old enough to have done all of those things, but the truth is he's not only done that, but a whole lot more. Max, there's one little word in there that says congressional committee or something. Max worked with Congressman Tony Hall from Dayton, Ohio for a number of years, so that Max became the congressional expert on hunger, world hunger, and hunger here in the United States, and was the resource for Tony Hall in bringing the leadership that Congressman Hall brought to the U.S. Congress. That it was his that work which is responsible for a lot of the consciousness that the Congress developed of its responsibility related not just to hunger in the United States, but around the world. And you can't. We could take each one of the words in that biography and expand it out of where Max has made a tremendous impact and brought leadership to the Department of Education, to the White House. It's across the board. And now at Vista, I'm so excited because the Together for Tomorrow program started out as a cooperation between the Department of Education and the Corporation for National and Community Service. And it started out with 6 sites that were worked on, and then as soon as that got started, the Corporation for National Community Service just picked it up and carried it on, and that's happening here in Harrisburg with AmeriCorps Vista making the necessary contribution to the success of community involvement with the schools and the schools' involvement with the community. So, Max?
Thank you. Well, thank you, and a very good morning. It's good to be back in Harrisburg. Thank you for the welcome, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Rivera, I am grateful to share a stage with you, and we'll actually be in North Philadelphia next month giving a commencement address at Esperanza College.
So I'm excited for that. And to Chad and Messiah, a hearty thanks for the invitation. And Ken, I have to say, of all the introductions I've ever had, that one is the most recent. A special thanks, my colleague Billy Brown is here, works with the Corporation for National Service throughout the state, and helps to develop some of these partnerships. And so I'm grateful to be in a room of committed folks, and am also very excited on this of all days to be able to make an announcement from DC. You know, in the federal government, we love our acronyms. So, No Child Left Behind, NCLB. Well, that's being replaced now, as you know, by Every Student Succeeds Act, so the ESSA. We are all familiar from our own experience, as well as with preparing others for it, for the SAT, so the Scholastic Aptitude Test. Well, very excited on this day to be able to announce that that's being done away with. We are preparing for a brand new assessment. So, and let me get this right, Joint Operations for Kids Education is going to replace the SAT. Joint Operations for Kids Education, as we love our acronyms and our alphabet soup of DC. On April 1st, I am happy to tell you that JOKE is going to replace SAT. I was up at 4 in the morning thinking, what can I do to share? I'm glad you wrote that down, so you got that. See, I knew with a bunch of teachers in the house that I would... No, seriously. My grandmother grew up down the road in Lewisburg and Punxsutawney, so the realities of life in central Pennsylvania is one that I grew up hearing stories about, of great-grandfather having worked in the coal mines and that changing evolution. A few years ago, my younger brother graduated from Juniata College and has taken that education now around the world as he got to study abroad and lives in France now. And I am proud that I have a familial connection to this neck of the woods, and am very glad to be back. My dad, much like Secretary Rivera and Mayor Pompenfuss, was a public school teacher growing up. And so it was very clear early on what education meant. It was clear the importance of that. And I have a world-class education to thank for where I am now. But it was in a small rural school. We had kindergarten through 12th grade in the same building. 550 students. I graduated in a class of 32. And then was able to still take advantage of all that this world had to offer, and am grateful. And I wanted to share a little today about a few things that can present that opportunity to others. To my daughter, who's 11 and about to go into middle school, and son who's 7 and just started elementary school, I too have that sense of, I want what's best for my kids, just like every parent wants the best for their children. And so I wanted to share briefly about people, about partnerships, and about how that leads to progress. So, in terms of people, that's what I get to do now. AmeriCorps Vista is just celebrated 50 years, half a century, of putting committed, dedicated people into communities where they can make a difference. So we are the domestic Peace Corps. We are the ones that provide the folks on the front lines of fighting against poverty and all of the myriad impacts that has, whether that's in education, as we're talking about this morning, or in affordable housing, or in fighting hunger that I've spent my career on, or increasing digital literacy, or. For over 50 years, we've had more than 200,000 folks from the hollows of Appalachia to the migrant farm worker camps of California to the slums and inner cities of our urban communities. Vistas are the people bringing that dedication, commitment, and skill to that challenge. We are part of the larger AmeriCorps family. So this year we're about to have 1 million people who have served in a variety of capacities. Right now, we got a couple dozen right here in Harrisburg. Andy is one of them. And so we are grateful for him. I am excited to go with him and some others to Downey Elementary School after this to see the work in progress. That's what AmeriCorps Vista, the volunteers in service to America, do, in that we bring people to address those challenges. And we do that in a variety of ways, but it's about building capacity. So we've leveraged the $92 million in your taxpayer dollars and mine that come to the federal government that's invested in Vista, and leveraged that to $222 million in recruiting volunteers who donate their time, in writing grants, in getting in-kind contributions. It's the people like Andy and the 7,500 other Vistas around the country that are doing that right now. That's exciting. But they can't do that alone. They do that in partnership. And Together for Tomorrow is a perfect example of how partnerships work to address community challenges. We don't say from Washington, D.C., top down, you got to do it this way. We are looking for those partnerships around the country to say, here are our community needs, here's the situation in Pennsylvania, here's the situation in Harrisburg. We could use a little extra help. We could use somebody who can connect the dots. My teachers are busy focused on the classroom as they need to be. We got elected officials saying, we have larger challenges, but how can we bring folks together? That's what this partnership in the initiative Together for Tomorrow is about. So, as Ken was saying, I heard about Harrisburg and what Messiah College was doing and what this community was doing long before today. And that's because the partnerships are working. That's because you have buy-in from the schools. It was the schools who said, we could use this extra effort, this extra person who can help us connect the dots, who can reach out to the parents, who can work with the private sector to make sure that the inputs, the donations, the resources that they bring are the right fit, who's working with United Way to make sure it fits in with the larger strategy. That partnership here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, is one that is shared around the country, and you should be proud of that. So, just as an example, we have another bunch of sites. So I wanted to share, as Ken did, that this started just in 6 sites around the country and now is expanded to 39. And one of the original places was in Orlando, Florida. So the University of Central Florida did an evaluation of this program, just like you have here, and here are some of those results. So it was Vistas just like Andy, who were able to recruit almost 400 community volunteers, and of those, they were able to do the control trial that showed students who were mentored by those volunteers, 67% of them achieved a higher score academically than those who were eligible to be mentored but weren't. And the school attendance was 83% better for those who were mentored. We know that data from other programs, but for Together for Tomorrow, that showed that the efforts of Andy and his colleagues in not just doing the one-on-one tutoring and mentoring, but rather building the capacity by recruiting others in partnership with the schools to do just that, is working. So that is just a fabulous testament to the collective impact that I know we're talking about over lunch that a community can have. And Billy has worked with other communities, whether it's in Philadelphia or the greater Lehigh Valley or elsewhere, where we're seeing that kind of impact only through partnerships, where schools and elected officials are working together with United Way, the faith community, the business community. And what's happening? We're seeing an impact. And that leads me to my last point, that the right people, whether it's AmeriCorps or Vistas or otherwise, in partnerships lead to progress. So President Obama is right to be able to point to one of the successes we've seen. And now we have a high school graduation rate of more than 82%. It's not where we need to be yet, but that's the highest level in years because of seeing some of the progress that comes from the right partnerships. We see that in a variety of sectors that are impacting education. So I was just with two other Vistas the other day in Baltimore, and both of them were re-entering society after some prison time. And they wanted a way of giving back. They wanted a way of doing right. And so they joined AmeriCorps Vista. And Nicole and Richard are taking their life lessons and sharing them with others. So they're involved in mentoring in ways that will help prevent students from following that same path. So other data we have show that students who are mentored are 75% less likely to get involved in illegal drug activity. And Richard is sharing his story saying, you don't want to go down the path I went down. And he's doing that because we're making progress. So just because he has a criminal record didn't preclude him from serving. And now he has a job that's allowing him to spend his time mentoring others. Nicole is launching an after-school community effort this afternoon that she and others have spent months building up to be able to say, don't go down that path, go down this path. That's real progress. And Jerry, I met up in Boston, is 19. He went through a program much like this. He connected with a community center, and they had AmeriCorps members. And so he was curious and started asking about it. And then he joined. He's 19, and this is the way he's going to get to go to college. He makes a living allowance, but at the end, he's going to earn an education award or scholarship of almost $6,000 that's going to help him get to school. That's progress, where the right people working in partnership, just like here in Harrisburg, is able to make a difference. So I wanted to just wrap up with a quote from one of those Together for Tomorrow sites. An AmeriCorps Vista named Catherine worked at Pinecrest Elementary, same name as my daughter's elementary school, but different place. And this is one example she shared because of the right people working in the right partnerships, making real progress. So Sophia is a bright kindergartner who loves to play, has many friends, but will not speak to adults. At the beginning of the school year, she would not talk to the teacher at all and would fail some of her tests because of not speaking. I recruited a tutor, said Catherine the Vista, to work with her on speaking to adults. Both her Together for Tomorrow tutor and the teacher worked with her all year, slowly gaining her trust and asking her questions. By the end of the school year, Sophia received a 100% score on her last oral exam. That's the real progress that comes from the partnerships that you have created. And so I wanted to come all the way from Washington, D.C. It wasn't that far, really. But it's often removed from the day-to-day challenges that you face. But I've heard from Ken and from Chad and from others what a great success story Harrisburg is. And I just want you to continue that. I would ask that you would continue to be an example to the rest of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to the rest of the country, because of what we see in the room this morning. Because you have gathered together from different places, from different sectors to say, it's important to forge these partnerships, you can continue to be a light set on a hill, an example to the rest of the nation, and a way forward for the students that you serve. And so I wanted to come join you this morning to say thank you and keep on keeping on. All the best.
This was a wonderful showcase opportunity to really show the White House and the AmeriCorps Vista program and others the type of collaborative partnerships that are really working in Harrisburg. Where there's been a spotlight on Downey. There was also a spotlight on some of the efforts that the city has made to try and reinvigorate our partnership with the school district. And we talked a lot in this last panel discussion about the importance of returning the school resource officers, a program which had great benefits, really focused on combating truancy, on mentoring kids and keeping them from dropping out, keeping them from in the educational system rather than in the juvenile justice system.
We don't always want to have a police officer come just because there's trouble and just because there was an incident. We want to have and continue to have that relationship where people on the block and citizens and residents are able to flag down an officer, have a healthy conversation, be fruitful in that conversation. And working with the schools is no different.
Well, we were talking about our interaction with youth within the city and how we can build better relationships through many different aspects, through the business aspects, through law enforcement aspects, community engagement aspects, and how each one can build on those. I spoke about our relationship in the past with the school resource officers and how we built a very strong relationship with the community and with the kids back then. And that was good for the community. We had an excellent working relationship with the schools. The kids trusted us greatly, and at the time we were able to build that rapport to help solve crimes.
It was a great conversation between the audience and the panel. Really trying to focus in on how all the different aspects of youth development are implemented through the city. Certainly we talked a little bit about the police aspect, but I want to talk about how we also address the youth through our programs, through Parks and Rec, where we try to keep the kids occupied during the summer. We have 6 playgrounds where we run the programs. We have a lot of participation, but it also, through those programs, we also encourage development. And how to interact with each other, team building, those kinds of things. And then we also talked about the community side, where we try to encourage the children to participate in neighborhood activities like cleanups and neighborhood meetings and things like that.
I'm encouraged. It was good to have Secretary Rivera here. It was good to have the White House here. I think it's important for us sometimes to recognize that we can lead as a district, despite the struggles that we have and the issues that we have. We can model proper working partnerships and good schools right here in the capital city.